Psychedelics Today with your hosts Kyle Buller and Joe Moore. My name is Kyle, and if this is your first time tuning into Psychedelics Today, this is a show that covers the resurgence of psychedelic research in academia and other institutions. So we chat with leading experts in the field of psychedelics and get their opinions and learn more about their work and research and just learn about this new growing field, which is really exciting. In this episode, we are chatting with Malin Uthaug. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Malin is a PhD student studying ayahuasca. So her master's was in health and social psychology, and her thesis during her master's was titled "The Long-Term Effects of Ayahuasca on Affect and Creative Thinking." So her PhD is exploring that more in depth as well. She also has an interest in 5-MeO DMT, which is actually how we got connected with her. I believe Joe reached out to her on some forum. She commented about 5-MeO, and we were like, hey, we should really chat. You should come on the show and share what you know about this. So in this conversation, we talk about ayahuasca, we talk about 5-MeO, DMT, some of the facilitation things that have been going on, and just some, structural criticisms about that. And really interesting, we get into the conversation a little bit about ritual and like the ceremony behind ayahuasca and if that plays a role in the healing, which I think is a really fascinating topic. And I'm really happy that Malin has taken that on to investigate that, to see if there is anything to the ritual aspect of ayahuasca, or could it just be the substance doing the healing? Set and setting. I think it's a really cool research idea, and glad she is taking that on. So she's also a life coach and public speaker. She started a coaching project called Loving Gratitude, which serves as a platform to spread information related to positive psychology and transpersonal psychology. Loving Gratitude has also become a way to bring about information about psychedelics and help to destigmatize them. And Malin is also has been delivering talks and workshops in Belgium, the Netherlands, Czech Republic, Norway, and Colombia. And I think I forgot to add that she is doing her PhD over in Prague, so she's based over in Europe, which is cool. It's always interesting to talk to students, and especially from other countries outside the US, to just see what's going on in the psychedelic world. And I'm really excited for this episode, just because I personally like to have young students on that are doing really awesome work. It's really cool to get some new voices out there, maybe a voice that you've never heard before, and that they're doing psychedelic research and you don't know about it. And being a student myself, it's always interesting to see how other students are navigating studying psychedelics and trying to integrate it into their coursework. So I'm really excited to see how her career unfolds and a lot of this research that she's doing on ayahuasca and 5-MeO DMT. So I really hope everybody enjoys this episode, and let us know if you have any questions. You can send them in at psychedelicstoday email@gmail. You could also, send us a tweet. You can find us on all the social media. So if you aren't following us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, be sure to check us out on there and stay up to date. Hey again, before we jump into this episode, I just want to give a shout out to Entheozen. Entheozen has sponsored this episode, and they have a featured product called Transzen, which is a mood enhancement and stress support supplement. So it helps promote feelings of well-being and relaxation. Transzen is designed to promote optimal brain health, resilience, and supporting a calm, relaxed, and happy mood. Transzen can be taken daily to combat stress and low mood, or on occasion to enhance your meditation practice, which I've done. I've taken a few of these before meditation or doing some breath work, and I've really enjoyed it, or even just going out hiking. This product consists of 17 scientifically studied ingredients. This formula applies cutting-edge concepts of neuroscience to deliver a multifaceted approach to maintaining a healthy and happy brain. So check out Entheozen. You can get, if you're in the States, you can get free shipping from the website entheozen.com/PT. Entheozen is ENTHEOZEN. So a nice little play on words with entheogen and zen. So sweet. So yeah, go check out entheozen.com/PT. If you're living in the States, you'll get free shipping. And sorry for all of our listeners that are outside the country. Maybe one day we'll figure this out. And so thanks for listening and enjoy the episode. Malin Uthaug, welcome to Psychedelics Today. Glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's really exciting because you're one of the few continental European researchers that we've had a chance to talk to. We talked to a couple folks in England, but not too many people outside of England in Europe. And it's really, really interesting to get to a different perspective. We were just talking very briefly, and you were mentioning that you were doing a really interesting study right now, or maybe you're almost finished the study about the differences between ayahuasca therapeutically in a ritual setting versus a non-ritual setting. Maybe we're jumping too into the deep end right away, but I don't know. Could you describe what you're doing there?
Yeah, so right now I'm doing my PhD at Maastricht University. And basically, it's an extension of my master thesis, which was focusing on the long-term effects of ayahuasca. So in my master thesis, I was looking at what effects ayahuasca has on several dependent variables. If it could increase mindfulness-related capacity, satisfaction with life, divergent thinking, and if it could decrease depression, anxiety, and stress symptoms. And so now for my PhD, we're kind of like extending this a little bit further. So we just finished data collection on the replication study of the master thesis, meaning that we run the same test battery on different participants. So soon we have everything scored and we'll run the analysis on that one. And then in September, when I was meeting with my supervisors in Berlin, Jordi Riba and Jan Ramaekers, we were talking a little bit about, what else can we do? And Jordi was like, oh, you should look into 5-MeO DMT. And I'm like, wow, that looks interesting. And so I started looking around like, okay, I need to find somebody who's doing ceremonies and so I can start collecting data. So then we started doing a study using the same test battery again, just to see what effects it has with bufo. And soon we'll have this analyzed and written up in a journal. So until then, I do not know exactly the differences between the two, but it's coming.
So it's the toad medicine versus a full synthetic isolate?
Yeah, that's a different study actually, which is under planning now with Rafael Lancelotta.
Yeah.
So we're actually planning on checking the difference between like the toad venom and synthesized 5-MeO DMT, because there are heaps of shamans that would say or argue that the toad venom is the way to go. But we would like to check if that's actually the case. So we will check then with 5-MeO synthesized. So it will be very interesting for sure.
Yeah, that's huge. It's I think it's an important question to ask because it's becoming kind of an endangered species of sorts. So something we really need to watch carefully.
Exactly.
I don't think this community in particular wants to create endangered species. So Let's hope we can
No,
sidestep
no,
that.
no, of course. But the toads are a little bit fragile now at the moment because so many people are hearing about 5-MeO DMT. They want to try it. And of course, the toad then will be the way to go. So if then synthesized 5-MeO DMT shows to be efficient or even more, then I hope that that could actually save the toad a little bit of, yeah, not bothering them too much because they only come up like once per year for a production and have being milked, and that all of that might induce a lot of stress and so on, and that's not so nice.
Yeah. It was kind of crazy. I was chatting with somebody and they were saying that 5-MeO was legal up until like the early 2000s or mid 2000s in the States, and you could just legally buy it from like research chemical producers and whatnot. I was like, what?
Yeah?
Really?
I didn't know that. That's interesting though.
I forget when it became illegal, but it was like somewhere in the 2000s.
Yeah. It's a little bit different. Like here in Czech Republic, it's not illegal yet, and we hope it's not going to be illegal. But in Norway, for sure, it's scheduled, and Germany as well. I think Netherlands, they're more lenient there, of course, because, yeah, it's Netherlands. But, yeah.
So, Kyle,
We'll
2011, January 2011 was when it became a Schedule 1 controlled
Okay, my
substance.
guess was going to be 2010.
You're pretty spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, Wikipedia is funny because it doesn't list every country. And I know there's a lot of countries where it's illegal. Like, for instance, out of Scandinavian countries, it's only listing Sweden. And we know that's probably not the case. It's probably illegal
No,
in
and
a
I
lot of
also
other...
know in Denmark, like, it's allowed for, like, medical purposes, like studies and so on. So that's a nice place. But Norway, I believe it's very illegal. That's what I heard, at least, from my friend. So, yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about how you got interested in psychedelics or first exposed to psychedelics?
Yeah, for sure. It actually started 3 years ago. So it started with me traveling to Jordan because I was very interested to see the country. And I don't know, like when I pick a destination, it's because somehow my soul wants to go there. And there is something I need to do. I do not know exactly how to explain it, but Jordan called me. And when I was there, I had some unfortunate experiences that led me to be affected by post-traumatic stress disorder for at least a year. That's when I figured out that something was not as it was supposed to be. Because a year after I was working in Shanghai, and me and my friend, we were going to go to this party, and we had a taxi driver there. And in that taxi, I had a panic attack because in Jordan, what happened there was that I was attempted abducted and raped by a taxi driver. So it was very tough. And when I came back after that, like I think I kind of repressed everything, but you know what resists persists. So in that cab drive in Shanghai, I had my first panic attack, and I was like, okay, this is something that I need to deal with. So I came back to Czech Republic, and I started going to a therapist for cognitive behavioral therapy, but in the end it didn't really work. And I really lost faith in psychology at that point, especially also because it's my field and I was doing my bachelor on it. And this is what you do if you have an issue. Then you go in and go to a therapist. That's what usually people do. So I quit therapy and I try to like figure it out a way myself. I started doing martial arts. I was painting a lot, reading a lot, and just trying to figure things out on my own. Until one day then my ex-boyfriend, he put me in contact with a girl in Colombia who's a life coach. And she and we had a Skype meeting where she did a forgiveness meditation. So she guided me to this safe place. She told me to envision somewhere I feel safe. So in my head, this was in the jungle with the waterfall and flowers and butterflies, everything. And she told me to like visualize me sitting down in a chair, and next to me would be the taxi driver, and we would sit there and talk. So I had this internal movie, and I was having a conversation with him and expressing everything that I resented and just really let it go and cut the energetic umbilical cord. And after that moment, there was a change within me, and the healing started. And a few weeks later after that, I went to this Chayovna in Prague. And there was this shaman there talking about ayahuasca. And I was like, ooh, that's interesting. So I started reading more about it. And finally, I decided to go to Colombia to meet with this girl because I wanted to thank her for everything she had done and just really spend time with her because we really, really bonded. And when I was there, we did an ayahuasca ceremony together. And it was a private ceremony, so it was me, her, and her brother. And it was one of the most challenging, but also very beautiful experiences of my life. Basically, what happened is that I went through several stages where I had to work through a few issues. And one of them was, of course, the incident in Jordan. And I remember I was laying down on the mattress there up in the mountain, and I was just rolling around, and I couldn't really come to a conclusion of that trauma. So the shaman, he felt a little bit sorry for me at one point after 2 hours. So he came over and he's like, Malin, get up. I'm going to do like a cleansing ritual or whatever. And I was like, no, please, I cannot stand up. I'm so weak. So my friend and her brother, they literally had to carry me towards this fireplace. And he was waving around with some leaves, saying some, I don't know, magic words in Spanish. And I remembered he looked me in the eyes. He said it in Spanish, but I understood that he said, now you're going to feel a lot. And in that moment, there was a wave of emotions coming over me, and everything with Jordan was boiling up inside of me. I was crying and screaming for like 30 minutes or something, maybe longer. But I remember my friend, she came up to me afterwards and she's like, wow, you were in so much pain. And after I was done with that, processing everything, I stood up and I was feeling so light, and I could finally purge. And I walked to the bathroom, stumbling like Jack Sparrow, and I purged. And I saw in the toilet that, you know, there was a little bit of ayahuasca, of course, like this brownish liquid, and it had the shape of like a demon. As like a demon. And I was like, ooh, better flush that down real quick. And I walked back to the location, and the shaman was standing there crying, and he was very happy. And I was crying too. Everybody was crying. And I was like, wow, if there are any people on this planet who experienced what I did or went through similar things and they cannot get help from conventional therapy or other practices, then I hope that they could have this tool available for them. So in that moment, it was the summer right before I started at my master's, I decided that this is going to be my focus of my thesis. So this is how everything started. And right now, when I look back at what happened in Jordan, I'm thankful because it got me to where I am today.
Mm-hmm. Wow, thanks for sharing all that and being open. It's a really great story.
Thank you.
And did you only have one ceremony when you were in Colombia, or was it multiple?
That summer it was once, And I lived in Colombia last year when I was collecting data for my master thesis, so I had another one. But I also don't think that these things should be taken excessively. So I had it 2 times. I've had Bufa 1 time, and so far so good. I don't feel the need at the moment to take it more times.
Yeah, the integration and time in between is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was it like going back and wanting to study this as like a graduate student? Was your university open to this topic of studying ayahuasca, or was it like, whoa, what do you want to study? You want to study drugs?
It was the latter. Yeah, for sure. I was having a hard time finding a supervisor. I remember I approached my self-regulation professor, Dr. Hugo Alberts, he's a really good guy. And he literally told me, no, you're nuts. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to risk my job. So I was like, okay, shit, what do I do now? And then I just started searching online, and I came across, I think it was Beyond Psychedelics in 2016. I went through like the speakers, and Jordi Reba was one of them. So I was like, okay, this guy seems interesting. And I didn't know he was as big as he is when I sent him the email. But I got a positive reply, and he's like, yeah, for sure, I'm going to be your external supervisor. Nice. And by the way, you should talk to this other guy at Maastricht University who I just wrote a paper with. So I knocked on Jan's office, and we talked a little bit, and the deal was set. So I had my 2 supervisors, but it was a little bit tricky.
What was the other guy's name? Jordi and Jan?
Jordi Reba and Jan Ramaekers.
Oh boy, I'll get that from you later.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Well, that's excellent. And did you go to Beyond Psychedelics, or did you just kind of reach out that year?
No, that year I just flipped through the website online just to see the speakers, just to see if I could find somebody that could potentially be a supervisor. Mm-hmm. So I haven't attended that conference yet. I will during the summer, so that will be the first time.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
And how much longer do you think you'll be in school for?
I was in Maastricht last week having a talk with my supervisor, and it looks like I'll be finishing my PhD quicker than expected, which will be next year in October.
Great.
So because I've collected a lot of data already, and we're using some part for my master thesis, so now it's just about writing everything.
Right.
So that will be my focus now. At least.
Yeah.
And excellent. What kind of data are you collecting? Just like people's experiences and evaluating it that way, or?
We're using standardized measures. So like questionnaires that are developed. For example, we are using a depression, anxiety, and stress scale to look at people's symptoms. And also ego dissolution inventory to measure the rate of ego dissolution that they have. We're looking at the 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire, which is measuring mindfulness-related capacities. There's the satisfaction with life scale, and so on. But now we're changing a little bit in the test battery as the data collection finishes, so that we can collect different information. But also open-ended questions, asking about people's motivation to do the ceremony and what they get from it, and so on.
Right. So you're just collecting data. You're not working directly with ayahuasca and collecting it that way. You're just finding people that have had experiences.
Yeah, because there's also ethics in the equation. Like if it's not ethical for me to collect data and be a researcher at the same time and giving a ceremony or distributing ayahuasca. So I'm taking a stand as a researcher.
Cool.
Basically. Yeah.
So suppose let's jump into the deep end here about possible problems or major opportunities in the psychedelic world. Since you've been actively researching and involved in the field for a while, you might have some interesting feedback on that subject. Anything come to mind right away?
I just got back from a very interesting meeting with Mikhail Vancouver, and we were talking a little bit about shamans and fake shamans and this struggle here. I think there's a lot of shamans who would exploit the medicines and people that wants to take it, charging a lot of money for something that is so sacred. And I believe, for example, if you look at retreats organized in Peru or something, they're charging 300 or 400 euros, and in Colombia you can get it for 15 euros. It's insane. So that's one thing that people are looking to get profit out of it, when it should be more focusing on healing. Another thing is also the way the shaman is working, in the sense that you would have, there was this incident with Octavio in the fall with this video of him using a taser, and that is not okay. So I feel like there should be somewhat, I don't know, an ethical conduct for shamans to follow, and of course be more respectful to the participant, because it's about them, it's about their journey, and it has to be used. You have to use a softer approach, because people are so fragile in these situations that they need the proper care, preparation, and integration. Mm-hmm. So I've seen Octavio work, I've seen other people work, and there are differences for sure. I was just in Madrid, and this guy was taking his time with the participants. He was setting off like maybe an hour, and he would sit down and talk to the person. He would guide them toward the journey and take care of them. And of course, if the person needed it, he would, of course, continue even if it had passed an hour. So yeah, for sure, there are a lot of tricky things here.
Yeah, Kyle, have you just to give a little Octavio on the show before? In this
I don't think so. I was just gonna say I don't think we have. And for anybody that doesn't know who he is, he's just a facilitator in 5-MeO DMT.
Yeah.
Right. So recovered addict. He's got an interesting story. I think he's an OB from Mexico. I think, and yeah, this thing about the taser was a really big deal, and that was caught on video. There's also, so I guess the biggest deal is it's not consensual. Like if before taking the drug, the person agreed to it, perhaps that would be okay. But I still think it's probably not okay, because there's a fair amount of potential for harm, since we have minimal or near zero data on 5-MeO DMT. And I've also heard stories of non-consensual snuff up the nose on or I guess rapé, and also water, like pseudo waterboarding. I don't know if that's exactly the case. I think just buckets of water in people's faces while they're laying down, also non-consensually, and I think consent is the biggest deal here.
For sure.
Yeah, and I've been following it really closely online, and I think that's the end of the story, really. But I had one point that nobody else would really bring up, which is falling risk or drowning risk. So say, for example, you're in a river or in an outdoor environment, which seems to be the way most facilitators do this stuff. There is a huge amount of risk for participants falling, since a lot of them get it administered standing, and that could lead to head injury, head or neck injury, or of various assorted injuries, including like a broken hip or something, because some of these people are, over 60. So, you fall, you could break your hip, and that's not good either. So I think these are concerns that need to be talked about.
Absolutely. And some people, as you say, they ask the participants to stand up, and usually then there will be several people around them, like catching them if they decide to fall, Right. But for example, other people will do it sitting, and then the person would just lay down. It's not that big of a fall, basically, so it's easier to handle.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. I think another problem is the concept of the only facilitator, perhaps. In some kids, I don't know about Octavio in this one. This might be more generally speaking. When facilitators also smoke 5-MeO DMT at the same time as a participant, I feel like that's something where the facilitator might not be in control of the environment anymore. Like,
True.
theoretically, yes, like you've done it 800 times, so it's okay to, you know yourself. But, what if you put that person at risk of an injury or something? Yeah.
I also know the facilitator, if he smokes, it's not as much as the participant.
Okay.
So he's not dragged into that journey of complete ego dissolution. It's just like scratching the surface a little bit. So like the facilitator would still be here, but having one foot in that dimension and one foot here. So it's not that he's having this complete ego dissolution experience, which makes it possible to work a little bit.
Well, what about like shamans that drink ayahuasca with their participants?
Well, in Colombia, the shamans, they were drinking during my ceremony, but it's also a little bit just to be in that energy field. Because what I learned in Colombia is that if you're not drinking, you can be affected by the energy of the spirits that are coming. And because there was this case in Colombia when I was collecting research, I didn't drink because I had to take the stand of a researcher. And the shamans was like, well, you should have a little bit because you can be sick from the energy. And I was like, no, it's okay. I can handle it. And he's like, yeah, but the only solution then is to drink ayahuasca if you do get sick. But I don't know, like it would be interesting to see if this is something that could be researched, like energy and so on, but that's into the future for sure.
Well, that's interesting because recently, like when I've been doing these breath work and kind of like shamanic drumming circles, I feel so drained afterwards sometimes. And like, I'm just like, what the hell is going on here? Like, I'm not doing that much work. I'm just holding space, but holding space for people going through their stuff is, if you're like empathic, it's a lot of energy. But
it is.
Yeah, recently when I've been doing these, I feel so drained afterwards. I'm like, what the hell?
What is it? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I was brain dead each time I came from data collection also because I'm there with the people and I see them, I see their journey, I talk to them afterwards. So of course you get exposed to all of it. Traumas, laughter, tears, love, unity, it's a lot to take in. That's for sure. But another thing that came to mind right now is when I was collecting data in Colombia, they're also very particular about if you're a woman and you're on your period, you cannot drink or you cannot be near the location. So me and my friend, we were both on our period, so we had to leave. But it was an interesting thing that happened because I was standing there with a friend of mine and he was lighting his cigar because he was going to clean the area around the ceremony. And it wouldn't lit up. And he's like, oh, the energy is not so clear here now. And then I hear from the inside of the Malacca, they started playing the drums. So I was like, oh no, I have to go because I'm not supposed to be here. And then his cigar lit up instantly. And I was like, whoa. So I started walking towards the gate, heading to the car where we're going to sleep in. And I had this feeling that I recognized from my own ceremony. When you're under the influence of ayahuasca, you have this like weird feeling in your body. And for a brief moment, I think, I don't know, the spirit of ayahuasca came to say hi. And it was really interesting. But it made me think about like energy and how all of these invisible things, how it could be a potential that we are affected, but we're not able to see it, just to feel it.
What's your take on that being like a researcher trying to like analyze a lot of this stuff?
Yeah, I do. I don't think that science has the proper tools to measure everything. We can measure subjective effects and so on, but there are a lot of things that is very unexplainable, and some things wouldn't be considered valid from a scientific point of view. So I don't think we can fully understand what ayahuasca or 5-MeO DMT can do, but we can get a little bit of it. So we'll see what the future brings for future measures.
One of the things I like to say when we talk about this kind of thing is, number one, science is really young. Number two, our renewed research ability on psychedelics is also incredibly young. Also, scientific truths are kind of like provisionally true. They're true for a period of time until something new comes out, and everybody in science operates that way. It's like, okay, you're going to say that's true until something comes along to disprove it, or to say, okay, it's true, but there's all these other factors, so we need to expand that truth, or expand our model or something. Groff wrote about this a bunch in regards to like paradigm shift. That's kind of like a little played out now, that whole discussion, but I think there's something there. At a certain point with psychedelics, I really expect that we're going to hit a wall, theoretically, and we're going to need to update, where we stand. I think Groff's work is really going to help. I think a lot of other theorists, philosophers, scientists' work is going to help inform what that looks like as well. This energy stuff that we all talk about, but we don't really know exactly what it is or what it means. Like, there's going to be a lot of development there eventually. It's just a matter of time, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. You can think back into history, like before people thought electricity was magic, the thunder was Thor running around with the hammer, but then our perspective of things changed, our knowledge changed, but reality didn't change. It's just our understanding of it. So I think there's a lot more to come in the future, and we just gotta wait for it and see. I'm really excited though. And there's tons of potential in this field, and there's so many questions to ask, so many answers to receive. So yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah. I think one of like Groff's critiques too is like moving past the Newtonian Cartesian paradigm, which a lot of like psychology, medicine stuff is stuck in, because, we view the body as this like mechanical thing that it works in a certain way. Whereas like, say, physics has gone kind of beyond that, and it's a little bit more complex. And, you're talking about energy and waves and particles and in a different way. So. Yeah,
for sure. And there was this, I remember the research from HeartMath. I don't know if it's probably not waterproof, but it's talking about like how the heart can generate like electromagnetic field that you can expand and connect with people, feel people's energy get impacted and so on. But
yeah. Kyle, have you heard of this HeartMath Institute?
I have. I haven't researched too much into it, but I've come across it a few times here and there.
So Dave Asprey, the guy that does the Bulletproof Executive thing, is really into it. I think they talk about heart rate variability often, HRV, and some other measures that are like kind of new on the scene. And one, for sports, one interesting thing about this kind of tool and heart rate variability is you can tell when you need more rest before you do your next workout or training session. As opposed to just doing 3 days a week, you might not be fully recovered yet, and you could have a more optimal outcome if you maybe took a few more hours or another day off, which is pretty interesting stuff. And there's all sorts of stuff around mindfulness health there too. Hey everybody, Joe here. This podcast is brought to you by Entheozen. We want to feature their product TransZen. It is great, and I've been taking it daily for a while now. I think it's a wonderful product, and we want to have more of you guys try it out. We've partnered with them to get you free shipping, so check them out at entheozen.com/PT to get your Psychedelics Today free shipping offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to, I guess, kind of like magical thinking in a sense, I don't know how much you can talk about some of that research you're doing with like the ritualistic use of ayahuasca
Right.
versus like the non-ritual. Like, can you speak about any of that, or are you still kind of collecting data?
No, like I don't have the results, but I can give a little teaser. Right now we're just starting collecting data on the control study. So we're going to a location, and there people are receiving placebo, which is like an ayahuasca. So we made this like placebo on the spot. So we assigned uh, this to the participants, and it's really interesting to talk to them because none of the facilitators know who gets what. The participants know that it's a chance that they will have placebo, but they won't know until the next day. And last month I was in Marbella, and we gave placebo to some and ayahuasca to some, and I talked to them the next morning. So I'm like, yeah, what did you think you have? How was your experience during the night? And actually, people that had placebo, they thought they were on ayahuasca, and the other way around. So it really makes me question where's the effect coming from? Is it the ayahuasca, or is it just our mind and the expectations, the things we expect to happen from this that is causing these effects? So this is the reason we're running this study, because we want to see if it's actually the brew or the ritual set and setting that is causing the effects.
That's fascinating. I'm really excited to hear how this wraps up and what you come up with.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. We've just got to finish data collection, and then I'll start analyzing and typing it up. But yeah, it's good.
What's your hypothesis for this?
Yeah. I think the mind is very powerful. And I think that our expectations of certain things can drive us to have, or like to create experiences, or make an analysis out of a situation that fits that expectation, or that, I don't know. I lost my train of thought right now.
Happens to me all the time.
Yeah. No, I had it on the tip of my tongue, but yeah, basically, I think it could be that we are expecting something to happen, and then we sort of like make it happen. You have like fake it till you make it in psychology, where like you can tell yourself these positive affirmations and it will become true. And maybe by having certain expectations, you could trick yourself into being relieved of depression because you want it, not because ayahuasca made it that way. So we will see what comes out of it, but I'm really excited.
And what kind of like ritualistic setting are they in? Like what's going on there?
At the control study, or in general?
Yeah, in the control study.
Yeah, so this is just like in Marbella, they were in this house, outside or inside. They're laying around on the floor. The facilitators are playing music. It's very similar to how they would do it in, for example, Colombia, and so on.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And in those traditions, like, are you specifically doing research with Amazonian shamans, or are you doing research with UDV and Santo Daime-like groups, or?
As of now, it has been with shamans in Colombia because of my contact there. And I've also been to ceremonies with Octavio and some other people from Mexico. And it's usually then, for example, with 5-MAO, they come to different locations. It's usually outside in a garden or something, but it kind of like has the same setting. And with ayahuasca, it is in Colombia. They're usually in this ceremonial house called the Maloca. And there they are playing music, the Icaros, and so on. And that seems to be very much the case everywhere I've been. And the only thing that differs might be like the songs are in English instead of Spanish, and yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's really interesting. I can appreciate that approach. Yeah, and it would be really interesting long term if other researchers could do similar studies with those Christian churches, like UDV Santo Daime. I guess Christian syncretic is the right word, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be really interesting too in the future if those kind of things can get researched as well. I would just love to see the differences. Are there any other names in the 5-MeO research world that you think are doing interesting work? You already mentioned Raphael, and we really appreciate his work so far.
Yeah. No, I came in contact with Raphael because I saw his YouTube video from Breaking Convention. So I actually wrote him a message. I'm like, hey, nice presentation. And we had a Skype meeting shortly after that, and it was really, really nice. And we have been speaking a lot since that point, sharing information, and now we're planning to do a study together. I really respect him. He's a very nice guy. He has his values and everything. So I think he will be a good person in the future, doing a lot of great work for psychedelics.
Right. Absolutely. And can you tell us a little bit about your mentors or advisors and what kind of work they've done in the psychedelic field?
Yeah, so Jordi Riba is at Sant Pau Hospital in Barcelona, and he's been doing a lot of studies on ayahuasca. And Jan Rame-Eckers, he's been doing a lot of studies on alcohol and, for example, driving. Jan hasn't been that much into psychedelic research until he met me, I think. So I dragged him along. But Jordi has been doing a lot of research on ayahuasca. And it was interesting. I think he published a journal here last year, right before Christmas, where he actually found that it's not the DMT, but for example, the MAO inhibiting alkaloids that is causing the relief of depression and so on, which I found very interesting.
That is really interesting.
So theoretically, we could be eating something like Syrian rue?
Yeah.
Huh.
Which I actually got it from a market in Morocco. They had it there. So I saw online that we could make a tea from it, and it has a lot of good health benefits. Like, it's good for your heart, it's good to relax, it's good for insomnia and like period cramps and so on. So I got a little bit, and I'm gonna make a little tea and see how it affects.
That's great.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you know if there's any people in Europe doing microdosing research with stuff like this, like ayahuasca, 5-MeO, or MAOIs?
No, that would be more with psilocybin, I think. Yeah. Well, I have been talking to people that did microdose on, for example, ayahuasca, but that was just personal experience and not really scientifically based. But that would also be an interesting thing to do in the future, to see what effects that is giving. So, yeah.
Are you seeing enough research students coming along in Europe too? So peers, I guess, or is it kind of a really small group of people?
For doing this kind of research?
Right. Psychedelic research at the university setting.
Yeah. So right now, actually, I have 2 interns who actually approached one of my supervisors during a tutorial meeting at Maastricht University, because they figured out she was doing this research with me and they were very interested. So right now they're helping me with data collection and scoring questionnaires and so on. So I think there's going to be more and more people jumping on board. So, which is good, because there's so much to do and we're so few, so we cannot do all the work. So we need more people. Yeah.
Do you have any tips or advice for students that want to get involved?
just be passionate. Be passionate about it. Stay true to ethics, and do not stay objective.
Yeah. What's been one roadblock that you've hit being like a student trying to study some of this?
As I said earlier, it was a little bit tricky to get a supervisor. The other thing is the legality of these substances. It's a little bit tricky. There are many things I would like to do in regards to research, but because it's illegal, it's sort of in a gray zone. There isn't much we can do at the moment besides gathering preliminary evidence for its effects. And then perhaps later on we can move on to control studies and trials in a laboratory and so on. But right now it's about focusing on the effects of naturalistic studies and doing questionnaires and so forth.
Cool.
Because of the interesting legal situation in Prague with drugs, are you able to do, or would some people be able to do research there that you couldn't do elsewhere in Europe?
The thing is, I know here in Czech Republic, ayahuasca is illegal. So, but there are things happening underground, of course. But 5-MeO is not illegal yet. So that makes Prague a little bit more attractive, for sure. Yeah.
That's interesting. And now, any big opportunities you see in psychedelics on the horizon for research or otherwise?
I think researchers should now try and focus on integration and harm reduction, because I think that the experience, the psychedelic experience, the ceremony is one thing, but how you integrate that experience and learn from whatever lessons you had, integrating this into your life is important, and doing it correctly. And so for some people that might be, I don't know, doing artwork, writing or something, is just figuring out what works for different people. So I think we should research more on integration for sure, and also harm reduction.
Awesome. Were there any techniques or any talk of integration with the people that you were doing this work with in Colombia? Do they perceive integration the same way, say, we would do that?
For them, Colombians, I think, from my point of view, they're taking things a little bit more easier than people in Europe. And I actually saw that when I ran the analysis on my master thesis, that there are cultural differences between Colombians and Europeans. So, for example, we saw that Colombians, they have higher satisfaction with life than Europeans, and they also have higher mindfulness related capacities than Europeans. And I think it's because of their lifestyle. Colombians are super warm, friendly, very, very happy and easygoing. And then you have us Europeans working our asses off, running after, I don't know, deadlines, duties, and everything. And it drains us, you know? So I think here in Europe, there's a lot of work to be done. We need to slow down, for sure.
Definitely.
I'm feeling a huge need for that myself.
Oh, yeah.
I think all of us in the quote unquote Western culture kind of could benefit greatly from that. We're kind of chasing those goals, right? Of, prestige, money, whatever, a big house or a big apartment, and all these external goals that don't necessarily correlate to happiness. And we all know it, we should know it at this point, but we don't necessarily do anything about it. And I think maybe psychedelics help remind us.
Yeah, I just came across this quote by James Hillman today. He's an archetypal psychologist. He said, all we can do when we think of kids today is think of more hours in school, earlier age at the computer, and curfews. Who would want to grow up in a world like that? And it's like, yeah, we're very highly stressed, and then we just kind of pass it down to the kids and try and get them just as stressed as we are.
Yeah. No, that's the problem. And I think it's important then to start educating a lot of kids, teach them yoga, meditation, and so on. Like, there are so many different tools that you can use, and not only psychedelics, but psychedelics would be a shortcut in a way. But there are many other things that you can use. So I think educating the kids is good to raise the different generations that are not driven by all these materialistic things and being stressed all the time, and just really just connect to their being aware, mindful about what is happening at the moment, stay true to their hearts, following their intuitions, and don't do things that they don't feel is right, or doing stuff that they feel like they have to do just because somebody told you to do it. And yeah.
So true.
So hey, what you're in Europe? Have you been to the Boom Festival in Portugal?
No, not yet. I've heard about it, but yeah, I haven't been able to go yet.
Do you have any thoughts on it? Or that subculture?
No, not really.
Okay. Or that subculture? No.
Don't know too much about it that I would be able to say anything, I guess. Like, I've heard the name and everything, but yeah, if you fill me out a little bit, I might be able to comment on it.
Yeah, it's interesting artistic world. I think the scene over here, the Burning Man scene over here, is really time consuming and energy consuming, which I think is good and bad. We have surplus, because we live in the West, we have like a excess of money and time in some ways. So it's kind of an interesting place to put it. Yeah. But in other ways, it's like, could we be doing more research or, taking care of ourselves more if we weren't trying to get to this remote location with all this stuff? That said, I do want to go to both Burning Man and to Boom Festival and maybe even to Africa Burn down in South Africa. But, that's... Yeah. It's just a funny world because there's so much critique and debate, but it's such an awesome artistic thing. It's a hard world to judge. What I like about Boom is it's in Portugal, number one. So they have, I believe, decriminalized drugs, all drugs. So as a result, they're able to do a lot of drug checking and harm reduction on site that other festivals, say in the U.S. or maybe South Africa or elsewhere, couldn't really pull off legally, which is really neat. I think that's really fantastic. There's obviously a lot more we need to do for harm reduction other than just drug testing, but it's a great first step to keep people out of the hospital. Yeah. So we're at about 50 minutes. Anything that we didn't get to touch on? We have, another 10 if you want to keep going.
I will. Let me just check my notes. We were talking a little bit about like what issues I've seen.
Right.
And one thing that came to mind is that I talked about how some shamans are driven by profit and not by healing. Another thing that I think is important is that you do proper screening of the participants before they go through a ceremony to make sure that they are taking it for the right reasons and not because it's fun, because it's not. It's serious, and you should prepare and have your right motivations. So I think then it's important that shamans or facilitators are doing proper screening, interviewing the people, checking with their medical history, because a person which has schizophrenia or cardiovascular disease should not be taking any of these things, because that could be very dangerous. And so this is one point that would come in handy with harm reduction as well, to do the screening so that you know that the person is physically and psychologically ready for such an experience. And also make sure that you follow up on them afterwards and not just give the medicine and leave them to themselves.
Do you find a lot of shamans don't do that?
Well, a few I've seen are just focusing on like giving the medicine and then that's it. And then people are kind of like left a little bit confused. Afterwards, there might be questions that they want answers to. And if the person is then not there for them, because, you know, like if you have a psychedelic experience, you kind of develop somewhat of a relationship or like contact with the shaman who gave you the medicine, and you have developed trust in this person. And if that person then do not help you out or something, you might feel a little bit bad about it. And then where would you go to get these answers? So this actually happened in Prague at the ceremony, and we were all actually just meeting together to talk about it, share our experience, and support one another. And that really helped.
It's kind of crazy to think like, yeah, people wouldn't be like collecting some of that. I mean, because we do it for breath work, and it's like we're not even ingesting a substance. You know, it's just you got to do some sort of health screening before diving into some of this work.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. Like, I can't believe it that it's that wild, I guess, out there. But yeah, hopefully people that listen to this realize that it's a great idea to do some medical screening and do that research. That's a huge step in harm reduction. And I believe all of us in this community care about harm reduction, or should.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's really important.
Yeah. Is there much ketamine therapy happening in Europe that you're aware of?
I think there is some happening in Prague with Thomas Palenicek, but I'm not sure if that is ongoing. I just heard about it because I was supposed to do a PhD with him, but then I ended up doing it with Jan and Jordi. So I know I wrote a proposal for a ketamine study that they wanted to do, but I do not know if it's actually up and going. So right. I know there are plans for it, but yeah, I cannot confirm it.
Okay.
And my focus is more or less on ayahuasca and bufo, so I'm not checking too much into ketamine and so on.
Right.
Yeah.
I've actually heard of facilitators going to countries a little further east, like Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine, to do ayahuasca sessions. Have you heard of these kind of rumors? Or sessions?
I know there are some facilitators who I've been in contact with who are going to like Lithuania, Slovenia, Croatia. Like it's spreading all over Europe actually. So it's reaching a lot of different places.
And law enforcement's kind of busy with other stuff, right? So they're not too concerned with ayahuasca in those countries?
It depends on the legality status, but I don't know. I feel like Eastern Europe is a little bit more lenient and corrupt, so it's easier to get by, I guess.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. Kyle, any other questions you want to ask?
There were a few that popped in my head. One was based around like, you know, you were talking about the potential future research of integration. And I was wondering if you had any ideas like what like a topic would look like, or like a focus within integration would be interesting to look at.
Yeah. So I think maybe checking out what different approaches, combining it with psychotherapy. Me and Rafael have been talking a little bit about this, and he said relationship-based focus therapy is a good combination with psychedelics. So I don't know, like looking at the effects of combining psychedelics with, for example, psychotherapy, and find a way there, check the effects of that versus psychedelics alone, therapy alone, and just check the effects within the groups.
Cool.
That's how I would do it, I guess.
Sweet.
And one thing that came to mind with right now is the ego dissolution. I think that's something that's worth looking into as well, because from what I've seen in my data set, that it looks like the experience of ego death, the stronger it is, mediates the changes in the dependent variables, which is interesting. So the stronger the experience of ego death, the better effects on, for example, mindfulness, a decrease in depression, stress, and anxiety. So because the ego seat is supposedly the default mode network, and this is shut off during a psychedelic experience, more or less. So the intensity of that is like shutting down the computer, rebooting.
Mm-hmm. We need that every once in a while.
Yeah.
So we need that every once in a while. It gets a little overwhelmed and you need to clean the files out.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like my computer before the session.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all good.
Great.
Yeah.
So do you have a website or any kind of social media you might want people to follow you on?
Yeah. Well, there is Instagram, Malin Uthaug, and there is also my life coach page, Loving Gratitude. So you can find the link there, my Instagram account, or just search it up on Facebook and it will pop up. So there I would usually just post quotes, interesting articles that I come across. Also, there will be events popping up soon, me doing talks, especially in Prague or somewhere else. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. And any last statement or words?
I think psychedelics holds a key to unlocking our hearts and seeing that we are all one, and that is what they're teaching us, to connect back with nature and to be loving and caring towards another. And I hope that once more and more people take this, we can all just be love, be gratitude, all of this. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for joining us in Psychedelics today. Let's wrap recording and we can chat for a little bit.
Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Malin Vedøy. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, Malin. Yeah, really interesting conversation that we had there. Really excited to see how her research unfolds and see how she starts to contribute. Oh, not start, she already is contributing to the psychedelic community. But, just interesting to follow along and see how her career develops. And again, just a shout out to Entheozen for sponsoring this episode with their product TransZen, which is a mood enhancement and stress support supplement. Joe and I have been taking this for the past few months. I've been really enjoying it. I definitely noticed some calmness and a sense of relaxation after taking it. Usually take it in the morning. It's loaded with B vitamins, which I think is pretty crucial for brain health. So go check them out. That's Caitlin Thompson, who developed this supplement, who used to help out the Aware Project in San Diego to put on psychedelic events. So really awesome that we get to support another member of the psychedelic community with one of their companies. So to get free shipping, if you're in the United States, go to entheozen.com/PT. And thanks again for listening. Catch you on the next episode.